I guess I won't actually be seeing you anywhere. You'll just be seeing me again. Hello and welcome back to my video. My name is Nicole and today I am going to be sharing with you my Christmas book haul. Let's go ahead and get into the book. So I'm going to divide this up into, I guess, three parts. So one will be books that I got at my used bookstore. The second part will be books that I got at a local independent bookstore. And then the third part will be books that I either received for Christmas or used Christmas money to get and basically ordered. The first set of books are all books from my local used bookstore. So these are the books that I was able to get from my trade-ins. So the first book that I have to share is, maybe if I hold it on this side, you won't get quite the glare, is The Female Quixote by Charlotte Lennox. And this is a book that I'm just really thrilled to find out about. This is basically a female parody of Don Quixote, but it is set in the 18th century, which is when this book was written. And it is both a parody of that book as well as just a parody and satire of the 18th century in general. This is a story of Arabella, who is growing up in the countryside and apparently has read one too many French novels. She is just spending all her time daydreaming of what it would be like if she was just in slightly higher society. She gets an opportunity to go to Bath and some other local cities and to experience society life there, but she has a series of misadventures, somewhat like Don Quixote, because she completely does not understand the society that she is now surrounded by. This I'm expecting to be quite comical and entertaining, and I love the book Don Quixote, so I'm excited to read an 18th century female version, which just combines a whole bunch of things I like all in one book. For me, it's also a nice short read, so it should be enjoyable. I was also excited to find not one, but two books by George Gissing, both The Odd Women, which I've been looking for a while, as well as New Grub Street. So I'll go through these one at a time. The Odd Woman is a book that I heard about probably over a year ago at this point. The Odd Woman is George Gissing taking the time to explore what it's like to be in the Victorian era as a single aging woman. Another book by George Gissing that I mentioned was New Grub Street. I found this very old edition of it. The the dust jacket is on its last leg here, but I was very pleased to see that the book itself is in very good condition. Let's see if I can get it to focus on the book instead of me. Um, and it is an older edition of the Modern Library. New Grub Street by George Gissing is basically his sharing a fictional account of what it's like to be in the literary and journalistic circles towards the end of the Victorian period. So I'm very much looking forward to both of these books because I know some people prefer The Odd Women and some people prefer New Grub Street. I was looking for a particular book by George Meredith and didn't find that one, but did find another one that piqued my interest, and that was Beauchamp's Career. Or I'm sorry, Beauchamp's Career, because it's French, and so they don't say the P, which confuses the life out of me. But anyway, and what intrigued me about this book was the description on the back, which is it's a political novel, but its politics are sexual as well as national. And I had no idea what that meant, but I thought it was interesting. Upon reading the back further, I discovered that this is about a retired Navy officer who decides to start a political career. It's involved in radicalism, which is a political movement at the time and later becomes the Liberal Party in England. He does find, however, that his political career is, and the trajectory of it, is somewhat being determined by the relationship he has with women, particularly one woman who identifies as a Tory. So I am really interested to hear about this move into politics, learn more about the politics in England in Victorian times, as well as see how the politics of relationships influence all of that. Another thing that I like to look for when I'm at the bookstore are books that I don't know about that are by authors that I do know. So in that category, I found Canopus and Argos Archives by Doris Lessing. So I am familiar with Doris Lessing's The Golden Notebook, and I do know that she talks a lot about philosophical topics, that her books are more about the themes that she's exploring than the characters or the plot per se. And I was very fascinated to find that she wrote something that is in the science fiction genre and kind of discusses the themes of like the beginning of life, the creation of the world, and goes on from there, obviously, since you get into a lot of sci-fi. This is an omnibus of five different books. It's quite large, that's why it's so big. So I'm looking forward to exploring these one at a time. I've been poking around for a bit and have been thinking about getting the next book and finally decided to do so since I had the credit. And that is Dr. Zhivago by Boris Pasternak. This is the translation by Pavir and Volkansky. I like their translations. I don't know that I would say they're the most beautiful, but I think they're fairly readable most of the time. This story takes place during the Russian Revolution and follows a poet slash physician as he leaves the city and tries to go into the mountains with his family and sort of the turmoil he has both like politically in the area as well as just in his own love life. So in some ways it kind of reminds me of Beauchamp's career, but he's not trying to have a political career in this book. And finally, I was also able to pick up a book that I've long been awaiting, and that is Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. So I have been wanting to read this book for so long. I've also gotten to the point where I feel like there's been so much hype about this book, and I don't always like literary fiction, that I've gotten concerned that I'm not actually going to like this book, especially once it won the Pulitzer Prize, which is this right here. That made me go, oh gosh, maybe I'm not going to like this book. So I had planned on getting it out of my library because every time I saw a copy in the used bookstore, it was only like $2 less than buying it new, and I was not buying a new hardcover of a book I wasn't sure I was going to like. However, this last time I went there and they had two copies, both in decent condition, and they were 99 cents. I have no idea why, but it's not getting any cheaper than that. I do really, really, really want to read it, and it's on hold forever at my library. So I figured for 99 cents, which was basically free because I had credit, that I'd give it a try. That's everything that I got at the used bookstore. Next, over the Christmas break, I did have some time to go travel a bit to a nearby city and go to a independent bookstore that I had a gift card to. The first book that I got, again, falls in line with the wanting to read more by an author, and that would be Aldous Huxley's After the Fireworks, and this is actually a bind-up of 3 novellas of his. So I have not recently read Brave New World. In fact, I'm not sure I've ever read it. I'd have to reread it to know for sure. But I have a basic idea of what that's about. And these books sounded similar yet slightly different all at the same time. And it was actually After the Fireworks that got me really interested in wanting to pick up these 3 novellas. So After the Fireworks is a story of a writer who goes on a trip to Rome. While he's touring Rome one evening, a young woman approaches him who is apparently a very big fan of his writing, but mysteriously has the same name as one of the characters in his book, and as he gets to know her, he realizes also has similar traits to her. They begin a love affair, and things go on from there, but there seems to be a lot of consequences and side effects to that. So I don't know what that means or what that's going to look like, but I found that very intriguing. I wanted to know, is she out of his story? Has she come to life? Is she like a super creepy fan that's pretending she has the same name? Like, what's really going on there? It sounded interesting to me. I love the idea of seeing a relationship after the fireworks. I'm hoping that's where the title comes in. So we'll see. Being that I was at a independent bookstore, I thought it would be remiss of me to not get some books by independent publishers. So the next 2 books that I have are both by the publisher Archipelago Books. I'm not in any way sponsored by them, but I am very, very interested in the books that they're publishing because they tend to be publishing classics and modern classics that are in translation. So they've been translated into English. So the first book that I have is the Tali Girls. I believe it's pronounced Tali. And this is by Siamak Herawi and is a novel of Afghanistan. So one of the things that I do like about their publishing is that they do always mention where the novel is from and or what language it was translated from. In this case, it was translated from Farsi. This story covers a fictional tale of a couple of young women who are growing up in a mountain village in Afghanistan, and their village has been overtaken and is now under the rule of the Taliban. So it covers extreme change in their life from beforehand to after being under that control, and just what their life is like to now and how they deal with the very difficult situation they're finding themselves in, how they still find hope and love in life under oppressive rule. I also picked up Salska Valska, is I believe how you pronounce it. This is a Icelandic novel, or it was translated from Icelandic, and is by Halldor Laxness. So this book is, I would say a coming of age story is how it sounds to me. So Salka Valshka is the name of the young lady, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing her name wrong. Sorry, I don't know why. Why I'm holding the book so oddly. She is a young lady who moves with her mother to a fishing village to sort of basically, it sounds like, restart their life. Shortly after arriving there, Salka Volshka's mother dies. And as it says on the inside, the death of her mother spurs her coming of age as a daring young woman who cuts off her hair, earns her own wages, educates herself through political text, and organizes a local union chapter. And that for me was like, check, 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 check. Like, yes, I want to read that. That sounds fascinating. So I cannot wait to read this book and see what it's about and see how she makes her way through life. Okay, sorry for the real quick everything change, but somehow I lost the footage for the end of this video, so I'm having to refilm it real quickly. These are books that I either got off by ordering online or just in, a regular big box bookstore. So I picked up a copy of Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. I have never read Invisible Man, but I have heard that it is an amazing work of fiction following the travels of an African American man, in which you really get through his first person narrative, a first person perspective of what it is like to be an African American man in the US. I was also able to pick up another book by Halldor Laxness, and that was Independent People. This is supposed to be in the vein of like Kristen Lavransdatter, which I do have up here somewhere on my shelf, but it's in the back row, so you can't see it. And this is the story of a man who has spent most of his life in servitude as a sheep farmer and finally reaches a point where he would like to be independent. At the same time, he is facing the news that his daughter would like to be independent from him, and a battle of will ensues, I'm imagining, all around. He's considering picking up John Fowles, the French lieutenant's woman, but instead I ended up getting The Magus by him. The Magus is a thriller, I guess, which is not typically a genre I read, but for some reason in the moment it sounded great. And it is about a young English gentleman named Nicholas who goes to a remote Greek island to teach, and while there befriends a local millionaire, lucky him. And or maybe not so lucky, because it is a thriller. So at some point, their relationship starts to go south, or at least very off. And the next thing Nicholas knows is he is trying to save his life and his sanity. So the reason I thought I'd maybe be okay with this thriller is that I do tend to be fine with psychological thrillers, but if it has like death, gore, murder, that kind of thing, people chasing one another, like I can't handle it. Like my heart starts beating fast. So we'll see how I do with this one. I just realized that this next book, Peach Blossom Paradise, is actually a pick that I got at my local independent bookstore, but somehow I got mixed in with this pile. So Peach Blossom Paradise is set during the time of the Hundred Days Reform in China, and the main character is the daughter of a wealthy landowner. They did not fare well during that time period if you don't know a lot about the history of China. However, the daughter herself, she manages to struggle along and tries to find her way as a woman during a time period where women are considered chattel. And she even finds herself having to take up arms. And as it says on the back of the book, her campaign for change and her struggle to seize control over her own body are continually threatened by the violent whims of men who claim to be building a paradise. I think that this sounds like it's going to have a lot of themes of issues that women around the world have always faced and continue to face today. And I also think this cover is just absolutely beautiful, even though, interestingly enough, I feel like it's a bait and switch because the themes in this book seem really dark. While I was at the bookstore, I picked myself up another copy of I Am Cat. I had a copy of this already. However, over Thanksgiving break, one of my nieces wanted to read it, so she borrowed it. And rather than hunt her down and try and get her to return the book to me, I just bought myself another copy so that she can have the one she took. I mentioned in my, I believe, December year-end wrap-up that I was going to read Life and Fate by Vasily Grossman in December. However, after doing some research on the book, I realized that it was technically the second book in a duology, and I decided that I wanted to read the books in the order they were originally made. However, I did not have a copy of Stalingrad, so I made sure that while I was at the bookstore, I picked up a copy of that. So now hopefully I'll be able to get that on my list sometime in the future. I also picked up a copy of a book that I saw while I was on vacation. However, I did not want to bring it back in my suitcase because it's big. So that book is The Garden of Seven Twilights. This is a sci-fi dystopian novel where it's set in 2025, I believe, which I feel like is not that far away. Is that really when it's set? Gosh, how horrifying. And atomic bombs are dropping all over the world on major cities, including Barcelona. Our main protagonist lives in Barcelona, but somehow mysteriously ends up being invited out to a luxury mansion. There are a lot of luxury mansions and millionaires in my book collection right here. And while he is out there, he finds that he is taking shelter there with a handful of other people who have also been invited out. They all begin sharing stories with one another each evening, or for the next 7 twilights, while they're waiting out the nuclear fallout, I guess, is what they're waiting out. Is that something you can do at a luxury mansion? I don't know. But that's what they're doing. And while they're there, they start to realize that the stories that they're telling that they think have no connection to one another are actually very oddly interweaved with one another. So I'm looking forward to seeing how their stories are connected, what their stories about, who's being implicated in these stories. The other reason I picked up this book is that it's supposed to be almost like a modern day Decameron. So if you're familiar with that book by Boccaccio, it's a very similar story where people are leaving a city in Italy to escape the plague, and they go and seek refuge out in the country, and they spend each evening in the daytimes, each taking a turn telling stories. So you can see the similarity there. If you're interested in that kind of trope, there's also a medieval novel, I believe, called The Heptameron, which is a different number of stories. So I think we now have 5, 7, and 10. So anyway, this is what I bought because I like the idea of that. I tried reading the Boccaccio, no, not the Boccaccio. I tried reading the Decameron last year, but found I wasn't actually that interested in the stories they were telling. So I'm hoping that is different with this book. The last book that I got was inspired and desired by me after reading The Tale of Genji. But one of the things I discovered in reading the book is that even though it is written by a female, that a lot of the court life that is discussed surrounds the men, and you get more of their perspective and their feelings about things, and a bit about the women during that time period. But I became very interested in the women's perspective and wanted to hear more about that. And in doing some research, I found out about a book called The Gossamer Years. And so I picked that up, or Gossamer Years in this case. Gossamer Years is the diary of an old Japan female courtier, as it says, and it explores the love, passion, and marriage during that time period. And apparently, the diary of this anonymous woman was written, and she discusses her love life, what it was really like to be a female during that time period, and just also her frustration with that and the various things that she saw. So to me, this kind of feels like it's the perfect juxtaposition to a more male-dominated tale of Genji. That's it for today. Let me know in the comments if you have read any of these books and how you liked them, or also if there's any of these books that you'd really like me to read and review during a wrap-up or anything like that. I hope you are having a happy new year so far and that you have a great day. Bye!